So what we're going to practice is just the basic motions of the scapula. So let's bring our right arm out in front of us. All right, so right now the right arm is at the 90-degree arm forward, and the scapula is resting on the back with the shoulder neutral. If we pull back, if our scapula pulls back but our arm remains straight, that motion is called retraction of the scapula. That's a mid-trapezius activation, and other muscles and the serratus anterior muscle that lives right here has to lengthen in order for retraction to occur. Now, if we go back to neutral, this is where the scapula is on the back of the body. Now, let's reach. Just reaching forward. Now the scapula has slid to the side of the ribs. Now, if we create a rounding of our spine and a rotation to the left of our spine, and we reach even further, then the scapula wraps to the side of the body. And then this is where we can get more of that activation in the serratus anterior. Now, if we go back up into a aligned spine and a forward-facing spine, but still with the reach, that's still an activation of the serratus anterior, just not to the next level of full activation. Now pull the shoulder back into neutral. Pull it back into retraction. Back to neutral. Protraction. That's protraction level 1, we'll say. Then we round the spine, rotate the spine. This is protraction level 2. It's the double reach. And slowly come back. And now when we lift up our arms and we do it, we normally get more of the shoulder activation than we do of this activation, because we need a certain kind of resistance on the different body parts to activate this muscle. So that's what we're going to do. Let's come up into our back bug. Let's get into our meta alignment with the elbow tips out. Let's go into our 3-point spinal alignment. Let's scoop the chin, knit the ribs, point the tailbone up. So then we create the zero line of the gravitational field going through our body. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to practice. So right here where we are in this 3-point vertical or 3-point horizontal spine, and the arms are in this position, just regular back bug, this is our neutral position. Now if we go into our protraction without the rib cage moving, so we push into the ground and we lift the ribs up, but not rounding the spine, then the scapulas are pulling apart. This is our protraction. Now, if we were to add a spine curl, so lift the spine up towards the sky and lower the head, pushing the hand into the ground, both hands, then this turns into the protraction 2, where the body is lifted so that the scapula can slide more to the outside. So we've done this movement, right? And you've done this in yoga with the cat-cow position, but there is a emphasis that we want to focus in on for the side of the rib cage where the serratus anterior lives, for that to activate. Now slowly lower the spine back to the 3-point spinal alignment, and then bring the shoulder blades back onto the back for the neutral alignment. Now let's go into the mid-trapezius activation by squeezing the scapula. Here, the serratus anterior muscle lengthens. Keep the arms lengthened, don't bend them, elbow tips out, wrist crease forward. Now push the hands into the ground to bring the arms back out to neutral. So the scapulas are neutral at this point. Now let's press the hands into the ground for the first protraction. So now the scapulas have widened away from the neutral position. Now lift the rib, drop the head, round the spine, and then that turns into the protraction 2 position. And then feel the hand sinking into the ground, and then the spine lifting. And then slowly lower back to the neutral position. That's where the scapula is on the back of the body. Now let's squeeze the scapula for the retraction, the mid-trapezius activation. Try not to lose your rib knit. Keep the tailbone pointing up. Try not to chin thrust. Press your hand into the ground for the neutral scapula. Press your hands into the ground to lift the body up for the protraction 1. Round the spine. Drop the head for the protraction 2. Now, while in protraction 2, let's begin to side bend the rib cage to the right. While we're in the protraction 2, the body is rounded. We're side bending the rib cage to the right. Right rib cage goes towards the pelvis. Keep the arms where they are. Go back to the center line. Side bend the rib cage over to the left. Keep the spine rounding. Feel that right scapula glide further away from the midline. Breathe into the ribs, side bending the ribs and rounding the spine and the activation of the protraction number 2. And then rotate all the way back to the middle. Find the neutral point, and very good. So that's a lot of compression on our wrists. So let's go down to the elbows. In the karate chop, this is a progression to what we just did. Okay, so imagine the scapula is on the back of the body. That's neutral. I can feel my lat muscles and my serratus muscle just by laying in this position right now. Okay, so what we want to do is now squeeze the scapula. That means the chest drops towards the ground. Chest drops towards the ground. Scapula squeezes. Feel the scapula squeeze. You're going to feel different sensations throughout the body. Try not to hike. Now go back out to neutral. Let's go into our first protraction. Press the elbows and the forearms, karate chop into the ground to widen the scapula. Let's go into protraction number 2. Round the spine, sinking the elbows and the karate chop into the ground. Let the head hang. This is our protraction number 2, serratus anterior activation. Slowly reduce the curl and the rounding of the spine. Now go back to the neutral Bring in the scapula to the back of the ribs. I know you probably don't know exactly where you are in space and what it should feel like, and it's okay. The way that you're following along is going to be just perfect. Okay, now let's go into our scapular squeeze. Squeeze the scapula. Keep the chin scooped, ribs knitted, tailbone up. Squeeze the scapula. Sink the elbows into the ground to bring it back to neutral. Sink the elbow in the karate chop a little bit more to widen the scapula for the protraction 1. Round the spine, the upper spine, thoracic spine, let the head hang. Sink the elbows. This is our protraction number 2. And then slowly lower the rib cage back down. And bring your hands back up into the back bug. And now let's come up into our sitting, or you can do sit bone to heel. Just shake out your arms, because those arms do a lot of work. Now, after shaking out your arms, notice if you can feel the difference in how your scapulas feel on the back of your body. Do they feel more pulled back? If so, that's largely because of the serratus anterior muscle right here is activated, and it's pushing the scapula and holding it in place. It's active and it's pushing it to the back side of the body. And this also helps with our arm float, so you might feel a little bit of space between your arm and the side of your body. Okay, let's go over this movement again with our arms up in the air. Let's bring up our left arm this time. 90-degree out. Get the shoulder into the neutral position where the shoulder is on the side of the body. Now, if we pull the shoulder back and the scapular squeezes, what do we call that? Retraction. If we go back to our neutral position, that's just neutral. If we elongate and reach our arm, that's our protraction 1. If we round the spine and protract even further, that's our protraction number 2. And then if we add the rotation, we could say that's protraction number 3. And then slowly straighten back up, bringing your body back into the neutral shoulders. Neutral shoulder is where the shoulder is on the side of the body. Not thrusting forward, not pulled back, not hiking, not depressing, just right in the side of the body. Okay, let's go through those protractions again. The first reach to your end range, protraction 1. Round the spine. Reach again, protraction 2. Rotate to the right with the curling of the spine, that's protraction 3. And then slowly come all the way back up. All right? You got all 3? Okay. Let's come back up into our back bug. Now we're going to bring our left elbow to the ground in karate chop, and our right arm will remain in with our hand on the ground and on our mat with a bent push-up arm. Okay, so right now we want to find what neutral feels like for our left shoulder. We want to feel what neutral feels like for our left scapula. For both scapulas, really. So our rib cage is pointing off to the right now. And so we want to find the neutral scapula for both right and left sides. All right, so now let's protract the left scapula for protraction 1. So now the left scapula is slid to the away from the spine. Let's round the spine for the protraction 2. Now let's rotate the body to the right with the rotation, sinking the elbow and the karate chop in even further into the ground. And this is our protraction number 3. You want to feel the side of the left rib cage activation. Try not to hike the shoulder, pull it down if that's the case. Your eye gaze is looking at the right wrist. Reaching the left elbow away from the body, now slowly returning all the way back around. Now if you do it right, you can only do 1 repetition. So let's slide the left arm back into our back bug. Let's bring the right elbow down into our karate chop. Now try to find and create the neutral scapula where it's on the back of the ribs. The shoulder is on the side of the body. Okay, so it's just with your own proprioception, you create that starting point. All right, so the left hand is in the quad pod palm and the push-up arm. The right arm is in karate chop with the thumb pointing up towards the sky. Now, let's go into our first protraction where we sink the right elbow in the right karate chop and the body lifts up. Now let's begin to round the spine. The head lowers. Round the spine, the head lowers. Sink the elbow into the ground even more. Protraction 2. Now rotate the ribs over to the left so the eye gaze looks at the left wrist, sinking the right elbow and ground expanding from there. Rounding the spine, eye gaze looking at the left wrist for the protraction 3. Gotta let the right elbow sink into the ground to feel it. The left hand can't dominate the pressure, so let the right elbow receive the sinking. Keep the spine rounded. Elbow on the right is sinking into the ground. Don't let the left hand take up all the ground expansion. Reduce the left hand, put more into the right. Then slowly balance all the way back out. Okay, now pull the right hand all the way back to the back bug. Let's do it bow-sided for now. Okay, with our hands beneath our shoulders or wider, wrist crease forward, elbow tips out, scoop the chin, knit the rib, point the tailbone up for the 3-point spinal alignment. Let's first start with the feeling of the neutral scapula on the back of the body. When we retract, that's where the scapulas pull together. So retract the scapula. Go back to neutral. Go into protraction where the scapulas slide apart. Now let's lift the rib cage and the spine to curl. The scapula slide at the side of the body for our protraction number 2. And then press the hands into the ground. This hand and the anchor points of our hand need to ground expand. They need to have some participation in the movement in order for the activation to occur. And then slowly return back to neutral. Okay, now we're going to rotate our hands to the 45 out, to where the middle finger is pointing to the 45 up position. The hand rotates to the 45 out position on both sides. Now rotate the elbow tips to point out. Scoop the chin, knit the rib, point the tailbone up. Find the neutral scapular position. Now let's squeeze the scapula. Squeeze the scapula. Unsqueeze the scapula back to neutral. Press the hand, quad pod palm into the ground to activate the protraction 1. Round the spine, lift the spine up, curl the spine up, sink the, the hands into the ground. Feel the ground expansion of the hands for the protraction 2. Feel both hands sinking into the ground. Now lift while the body is curled in your protraction 2. Bring the right hand up to the kickstand hand. Kickstand hand. Try to get the same level of protraction 2 on the right side as well as on the left. Lower the quad pod palm down to the ground. Lift the left kickstand hand up onto the lift the left side to the kickstand hand. Feel the same level of the protraction 2 on both sides. Rock the hips back slightly so you're not too far forward. And slowly flatten the left hand all the way back out. Quad pod palm with the middle fingertips pointing to the 45 up. Now balance back out to the neutral. Go into the retraction. The mid-trapezius activation. Notice if that feels easier. Slowly come back up to the neutral scapula. Go into the first protraction where you're pressing the hands into the ground. The scapulas widen, and now we lift the rib cage up towards the sky for the protraction number 2. The hands sink into the ground. The serratus anterior activation is present. Now try to reach the hands into the ground even further, creating even more length and space for the serratus anterior to activate and the scapula to slide away from the spine, and then slowly bring the spine back to the 3-point alignment. Okay, while the hands are in this 45 out, let's go into some pillar breath. Filling up the ribs 3-dimensionally. Breathe into the lower rib, middle rib, and upper ribs. Front, back, side to side, that's 3-dimensional. Start with the lower, middle, and upper. Breathe all the way to the top ribs. And then exhale all the way down. Inhale in and out. One last time, and then we'll do an arm shakeout. Good. And now let's do an arm shakeout. Shake out the arm, shoulder, elbow, and the wrist. And now let's just see what it feels like to have our arms on the sides of our body. What sensations are you feeling from that class? And let's now check in with our MetaMover community to see what you got from this class.